Hello and welcome to the CBV podcast.
Hello and welcome. I hope everyone's had a good day today. So, last night I went to go see the new Christopher Nolan film, TENET, and I just want to give you my review and thoughts on it. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to provide my shorter, non-spoiler review, so you can go into this as blind as possible and yet still know the gist of what my thoughts of the overall film were. And then I'll make it very clear when I'm going into my longer spoiler review, where I'll go into full depth of what I did and didn't like. For now, to start with, I'll go for the short, non-spoiler review, and then I'll make it very clear when we're going into spoiler territory. Okay, cool. So, non-spoiler review. I was really happy that we got to see another original film by Christopher Nolan, and just from that alone, I encourage people to see it because I think we deserve more original and new concepts in our movie experiences. I'm not against reboots or franchises, but we are. It does feel like we are heavily. It's overwhelming, all the franchises and reboots we're getting, and I'm not against it if it's done well, or even if it isn't done well, if it's done with a reason to be different. It's just that we're not getting as much original content these days, so I'm happy we have directors like Christopher Nolan to keep making new original films. Having said that, it was a very confusing experience. If anyone here thought Inception was a confusing film to follow, I thought that film was fairly reasonably easy to follow. But if anyone was ever confused by Inception, you're not going to like this film. This film is very confusing, and you have to quickly get your head around it and quickly catch up with everything they're saying. I even had to look up a few explanation videos on YouTube to try and get my head around what happened and what I just experienced and watched. Inception is a way easier film to understand in comparison to this film. So I think that should immediately tell you if this is a film that you're going to enjoy or not. The positives, more specifically, all the performances were great. There wasn't one bad performance whatsoever. It's the first film I've seen starring John David Washington, and he was great. I had seen the trailer where he starred in a film called BlacKkKlansman, and he looked great in that, so I couldn't wait to see him in this film as my first experience of his work, and he was great. So I will eventually get round to seeing BlacKkKlansman because he was he was awesome in this film. Also, Robert Pattinson is in this film, and this is my favourite Robert Pattinson role I've seen him in. There is a lot of his work I still haven't seen, but the fact that he was really good in this film gives me a lot of hope for his performance in The Batman and to see him portray Bruce Wayne and Batman. I was already sold on him through the trailer they'd released, but this just kind of cemented my confidence in him as an actor for the role. Kenneth Branagh, who played the villain, was very good at playing an intimidating villain, which is something I've never seen him do before. Usually I see him play kind of the hero of the piece, or just a good guy in general. So I don't think I've ever seen him play a villain. Not that I can remember, but this was a very, very good performance. He was intimidating when he needed to be. He had these quiet moments, he had these loud moments, which really did grab my attention because I wasn't used to him bursting out into anger. So yeah, he was very good. Overall, the cast was great. Had no complaints. The mix of action and the special effects was so good. I cannot figure out how they managed to create those sequences. They're such unique and original fight scenes. This really is stuff you haven't seen on the big screen before, at least not to this extent anyway. I won't say what the film's about if you haven't seen the trailers, but if you've seen the trailers, you know what I'm saying about the mix of action and special effects. But yeah, really good, really good. The score was awesome. This is up there for one of my favourite scores in a Christopher Nolan film. And it really matched the story of the film. All I can say is the score itself sounded like it was inverted and playing reverse, and that just really added to the theme and the atmosphere of the movie. So it's really cool that even, everything's inverting, even the score is inverting, which was just so cool to hear. And considering how tricky I imagine this film was to put together, I'm so grateful that this movie has so many practical effects. And I really appreciate that Christopher Nolan goes the extra mile to keep the effects as practical as possible. If you've seen his films, you know if he can do it practically, he will do it practically, and he'll only use CGI when it's absolutely necessary. So I really appreciate that he's still doing that even with this film, because it must have been so complicated to try and get your head around how the world works and how you're going to film and make this look as real as possible. But yeah, this movie was really great with all the effects and the practical effects. That's all my positives. My negatives. There were so many scenes of pure exposition that caused so much confusion for me, because I wasn't getting fed information with enough time to process it. If you missed the exposition, you kind of missed it. See, it's a film that you really do have to keep your ears out and try and pay as much attention as possible, because I'm pretty sure the setup, all the exposition happens in the first act, and without that you kind of have to figure out what the hell's going on if you missed it, which is kind of hard to do. It's a lot of brain power to watch this movie. So yeah, the explanation of how the world works was something that I felt needed a bit more clarity for those of us who perhaps wanted it to be as easy to follow as, say, Inception, because you can let the audience think about what's happening, but this film really, it just requires a lot of brain power to figure out what's going on if you miss the dialogue between the characters, especially in the first act. So I can see some people not enjoying the film purely based on how much effort you have to think about what's going on in this film, and I'm not against that, but I have to admit, for a first viewing experience, it was a lot of energy trying to figure out what was going on. It's not impossible to follow. I still feel like I followed a good 70% in the movie, but yeah, you do have to pay attention. However, I do feel that this film deserves repetitive viewing because of that. And I'm hoping that if I rewatch the film with the knowledge I already have coming out of the first viewing, I will find even more clarity and enjoyment with this hugely ambitious plot. So I'm glad that I have seen it, and I will go back at some point to see it again. Maybe I'll go back to the cinema to see it. I'm not sure. It might be a fact where I wait till it comes out on DVD, because especially if it's hard to catch up with what they're saying, I feel like I might need subtitles for a second viewing. So I might just wait till it comes out on DVD. And the reason I think it needs subtitles is the sound mixing wasn't always perfect, as the dialogue was hard to hear at times. This could have been an issue with the sound system in the cinema that I went to, but I don't know. I'll have to wait till it comes out on DVD or pay for another ticket to go in the cinema and see if I get a different experience if I go to a different cinema. So I'll be curious to see how many people felt that the dialogue wasn't easy to hear because of perhaps sound effects or the score overwhelming it. So yeah, I'm still debating how I'm going to watch it for the second viewing. I reckon I'll just wait till DVD, but if I do go back, it will literally be for the spectacle, because this film is just amazing to look at. That's pretty much as vague as I can be with my non-spoiler review. As you can tell, there's a lot of things to love about it, and it's just very specific things that I have issues with. That it didn't ruin my experience of the film. I do feel like the experience could have been better. However, I can see this being a good, like, a thing someone can deal with, or a thing someone just really can't deal with. Because if they have to know what's going on, this might not be the film for you, unless you're willing to watch it a few more times. Then I could see you, figuring out what's going on. But yeah, overall, everything is great, just except for perhaps the script, in the sense of how they explain the world. or even the sound. The fact sometimes the dialogue is a bit overwhelmed, so it's hard to catch up. So that's really baseline. It's a really good film. It just suffers a bit with the exposition. That's all. So hopefully, from that non-spoiler review, you'll be able to get a sense of if this film is for you or not. So, spoiler review happening right now. If you haven't seen the film and you're planning on seeing the film, pause this right now, go watch the film, come back and listen to what I've got to say and see if you agree. So spoilers, full spoilers, going in depth right now. Okay, you've been warned. Okay, so the plot. I cannot explain it in the order the film does, because that would take way too long, because it's so intricate and complicated with the timeline. But I can try to give you as simple of a breakdown as I can, because as I said, I have had to watch some explanation videos on YouTube after watching this, just to sort of figure out what I just watched and if I'd understood it correctly. Right, actually, even the movie takes a moment to express to the audience. Don't try to understand it, just feel and experience the inverted time. And I thought, it's a great way to kind of say to the audience, hey, like, this is some serious hardcore sci-fi, so, you don't have to fully understand every little bit of it. Just enjoy the visual spectacle and the effects, and you'll have a good time. And I did have a good time, just from its original sort of premise. But it did feel a bit lazy, a little bit, that they said, don't try to understand it, just feel it. That was definitely a wink to the audience, but I didn't mind it. Like, at least they're acknowledging it's a hard film to follow. So, the plot, as simply as I can break it down, a device that can reverse or invert the flow of time, called the algorithm, was developed by scientists in the future. However, fearing that the device could have devastating consequences, its unknown creator split the algorithm into 9 pieces and sent them back in time to hide in the past, and then that creator committed suicide. So, in the present day, in our present timeline as it is right now, the villain of the film, called Sator, is trying to locate all these 9 pieces of the algorithm so he can put it back together, invert all of time, and destroy humanity, basically. And his reason for wanting to destroy all of humanity is that he himself is dying of cancer, and I guess he feels that it's unfair that this is happening to him, so he feels that if he has to die, then everyone else around him should die with him. Yeah, that is the general plot. There is definitely way more stuff going on than just that, but just to get an idea of what the point of the film is and what the danger is, that is as simple as I can explain the plot. Obviously, if you're listening now, you've probably seen the film because this is a spoiler review right now. But yeah, that is as simply as I can break it down. And once I sort of had a little Google to figure out what the plot was, and I read it that way, I was like, oh, okay, so I did understand most of it, but there was like little details I didn't understand. So I'm glad I did read online what the plot was, because there were definitely a few things I missed. So, yeah, it definitely cleared it up for me. So hopefully, if you were confused and you just listened to that short breakdown that I just gave you, hopefully that will fill in a few missing details that perhaps you didn't catch. So, yeah, let's go into the specific positives of what I liked about this film. I love that when this film sets up the rules on how time inversion works, they stick to it. As far as I can think, I don't think they ever break the rules. Yeah, I can't think of any time at all when the rules of how time inversion works were broken. So that's really satisfying that the established rules and logic do make sense and do feel believable because they're never contradicted in the film. So that was really nice to see, because I was a bit worried when it comes to like time travel movies or anything to do with time, there tends to be a lot of sort of confusion and plot holes, and they do kind of address it in the film. Like, they're talking about all these different theories of time, and would this happen if this happened? Like, if I went back in time and killed my granddad, like, would I still be here? Because if I killed my granddad, then my parents wouldn't have been born, and therefore I wouldn't have been born. So, it's it's interesting that they do kind of talk about these theories, but they never kind of give you an answer about it. It's kind of up to your interpretation what you think the rules are. At least the rules that they haven't tried to go into with the film, because they don't go back in time to kill anyone necessarily. So, it is they don't break the rules. They just explore the rules that they haven't gone into a little bit. I like also how the film, when it would color code who was experiencing time normally and who was experiencing inverted time, which was really helpful, especially with all this exposition and details that I might have missed throughout. It was nice that they color coded the time inversion. So as much as they could, they tried to use red for moving in normal time as we experience it, and then they tried to color code blue, which means the characters were experiencing inverted time. They did this with the time inversion rooms. I don't actually know what they're called, those rooms, but there's rooms where you go through a door and you can either go through normal time or inverted time, and they color coded the rooms blue and red just so you knew which side of the room had inverted time and which one didn't. And they also, at the end, in the climax of the film, they color coded the soldiers. So if they were wearing a red patch, then they were experiencing time normally, and if they were wearing a blue patch, they were experiencing inverted time. And that was very helpful, because in that big climax set piece, with all these soldiers moving in different directions of time, you did probably need a little bit of that clarity, because there's explosions going everywhere, and you kind of get so used to the time inversion by that point, but you kind of forget which explosions are probably inverted from their perspective and which are not. So it was nice that they kind of clarified it with color coding. I also like the explanation of why oxygen masks were needed when walking through inverted time. Because when I saw the trailers, I thought, oh wait, is it what they're breathing inverts the time? Like, I don't know why I thought that, but I just assumed if they had the masks on, that was allowing themselves to be inverted, when in actual fact the real reason is they wear the masks so they can breathe in inverted time. So yeah, in real time you would breathe oxygen and then breathe out carbon dioxide. But if you're walking through inverted time, this logic is completely backwards, so therefore you can't breathe in an inverted atmosphere. So I'm so happy with their explanation of the gas masks, because that was very intriguing to me. Yeah, so I like the logic to that. It made sense for science fiction. I also like other details they explain of the inverted experience, such as how bullets become much more deadly when they are shot at people backwards. So if you shoot a person normally in regular time, the bullet would, it would obviously wound you, but it would be a fairly clean shot through your body. However, when you're catching a bullet, so therefore the bullet is shooting through your victim backwards, because of the flat base of the bullet, the entry wound of the enemy's body would be a lot more destructive and a lot more dangerous, because it doesn't have that curved front when it's going backwards. So that made sense, and that was cool to see that they actually used it as a way to torture people as well. So that was cool. Also, they explain that briefly cars are harder to drive in inverted time because everything was reversed. So the wind direction is reversed, and friction's different when you're driving invertedly, and just having an inverted experience. I can't remember exactly how to explain it, but it was a nice little extra bit of detail to explain. When you drive, you're technically driving backwards in the real world, so the friction's not going to be the same, your handling's not going to be the same, so you're going to have to get used to that. So that was a cool little extra bit of detail into the world building. I also like how we were re-experiencing the same set pieces again, but through inverted time, and yet the plot is ironically still moving forward. So by going back and experiencing it, the set pieces in inverted time, it doesn't feel like we're just doing it for the sake of doing it. It does feel like the plot is still going forward, ironically. So I love that. I love that we were able to see that all the set pieces from the first half, again in the second half, but from a different perspective. For example, there's a car chase scene that we experience in normal time, and then we invert time and we see the character try to assist himself in inverted time, and that kind of explains some of the mysteries when we first experienced that set piece. And then they do it again with the big plane crash sequence, how they have to go back in inverted time and kind of get an ambulance, I think the point of that scene was. But it was cool because then it explained one of the twists of the film, which was when we see the hero of our film, John David Washington, fight an inverted enemy. And then it turns out to be him. He inverted himself and he was having a backwards fight with himself. That was a cool reveal. However, I did guess it. Like, as soon as Robert Pattinson was trying to stop him from killing this inverted enemy because it was in fact the same person, I just guessed it straight away. That's clearly, secretly, John David Washington as well. He's just fighting himself. So he was trying to save himself from killing himself, if that makes sense. I know it just sounds like I'm speaking gibberish, but obviously if you've seen the film, you understand what I'm saying. Basically, Robert Pattinson was trying to stop John David Washington from committed suicide by accident, I guess. Yes, and so that was cool. That was a cool reveal and a cool twist, even though I'd already guessed it, but it was still satisfying regardless, just because it was a cool set piece. There was another cool scene. The climactic action set piece at the end is also seen from two different directions of time. However, the scale is massive. As enemies are just fighting in opposite flows of time, so the destruction is twice as crazy and twice as sort of confusing at times. But it was cool. Like, I did enjoy that. Like, you get to see explosions going backwards, and then they do this awesome thing with a building. I think the team going forwards in time blow up the base of a building, while the people going backwards in time blow up the top of the building. I can't remember which order it was, but it was just an awesome way to just demonstrate how sort of dangerous now the battlefield is, because anything can happen at any time, and they've prepared it like as well as they can. It was just cool to see the teams go in two different directions of time, working together, and see how that affects the world around them. So yeah, that was really cool. I also like the twist at the end that Robert Pattinson has actually known Washington, John David Washington, for years, even though Washington at this point has only known him for this one mission. So that was cool. I will admit, I kind of missed the clues a little bit. Apparently, on his backpack, I think, or on his uniform, I think it was his backpack, he had this sort of ribbon thing hanging out of it, and we'd seen that a few times in the film, but I guess I just was so overwhelmed with what was going on, I think I missed it. But I quickly understood what was going on, but I did miss it. So it was cool that was like a twist. That was a genuine twist that I missed, although I did miss the clues. So I'll be interested to watch it again and keep an eye out for that particular thing Robert Pattinson carries around with him. Although, having said that, the twist did remind me of Doctor Who, where the Doctor and River Song meet up constantly, but in opposite directions of their timelines. So, that twist isn't an original idea, but if we're dealing with time inversion, it was certainly a welcomed idea, and I did like it. And I also did miss the fact that Robert Pattinson saved John David Washington's life and kind of sacrificed his life. And then when we find out that Robert Pattinson has, known him for a long time, I didn't realize, I guess he was the guy that helped him escape. So I guess Robert Pattinson, he can't tell Pattinson that he's about to die saving him, I guess. So it was like a sweet moment and a sad moment at the same time, because it was the ending of Pattinson's friendship with this guy he'd known for ages, but it was the beginning of Washington's friendship with Pattinson, and he'll see him more in the future. It was a beautiful moment, but so it did, even though it's not an original twist, it was a nice way to end their relationship and start their relationship. So yeah, that is about all the positives that I've explained in the non-spoiler review and in the spoiler review. So now I'm going to go into the negatives. So again, I felt that all the exposition was given to the audience way too quickly. It's hard to follow, so I felt like I need to rewatch this film with subtitles at this point, just to clarify what the characters had been explaining. But again, it adds to some rewatchability value, so I'm not against that. But it kind of tired me out by the end of the film. Once it finished, I was like, ooh, okay, I can like relax and breathe and try and figure out what just happened. Another thing I didn't like was I don't understand how time inversion has been kept a secret, because with that inverted car chase happening in the film, that was happening in public. So unless the secret organization of TENET is willing to kill innocent witnesses, then this feels like the biggest plot hole of the film, because they're not hiding it, the time inversion. Like, if you're on the highway, you just happen to be on the highway at that point with the car chase, you would totally see a car flipping backwards, mending itself and driving again after crashing. So that was that was a very weird thing. I'm like, are they willing to kill people? Because they establish in the film that they will even kill themselves. Like, the agents and soldiers will happily kill themselves to keep it a secret. So I was just like, but are they willing to kill like innocent people? And that was never explained or gone into, so I had no idea. Especially with the fact that the main actress of the film, I think her name is Elizabeth. I can't remember her full name, but you know what I mean. The villain's wife. Even by the end of the film, the organization wanted to kill her because she knew too much about time inversion, but obviously her life got saved by Washington. So that was interesting. It's just kind of like a thing that we didn't need to know, but it did cross my mind about witnesses that were innocent to all this. Also, the physical time inverting technology wasn't explained well enough to me. Like, I understood, especially after reading some explanation or watching some explanation videos, I understand that the algorithm that is made up of these 9 pieces can invert all of time. However, and that makes sense because it was sent back from the future, like people in the future had invented it, so it was sent back to the present day. However, there were these rooms for time inverting, where there'd be like a red room and a blue room, and you'd go for a door and you'd come out in one of the other rooms. Where did that technology come from? Like, did the people in the future build it or come back in time to build it so it was already created? Or did people who found the pieces of the algorithm, did they figure out how to make this into a larger room-sized piece of technology? I was just confused where the doors were invented, I guess is what my point is. I don't think they ever explained it. So that was kind of confusing. And also they were built, it wasn't just one door that had been created. It seemed like multiple doors had been created. Like, unless I got confused and it's just the same room. As far as I was aware, when the characters go into this place where they store very valuable paintings, there seems to be one of these inverted door rooms nearby. So I thought, oh, that's like the place you go to invert time. I guess all the rich know where this is. But then I got confused because then all of a sudden it seems like we're in a different place for time inverting, like some kind of big massive warehouse. And then the soldiers know where it is. I was just kind of confused, like who invented the doors? How many are they scattered across multiple areas? And if they are, how come the soldiers know about it? Like, how come Tenet knows about it, but then also the villain knows about it? Like, this is another reason why I need to rewatch it. Maybe the villain's the only one who knows it, but the soldiers discovered where this room is. I don't know. I'll be curious if anyone else understood the whole door situation. I understood how it worked, like how it physically worked, how you'd use it to invert time. I just was really curious about its origins, like who built it and why does both the heroes and the villains of the film, why do they both know how to access it? Where do they get this information from? So yeah, that's something I need to rewatch to figure out. Sorry, I've got a bunch of notes written here because there's just a lot that I need to remember to talk about. Yeah, the doors were just the biggest thing I needed clarity on, I think, because that was where the logic was starting to confuse me a bit. Oh yeah, here's another thing. Even though it was explained that when you travel through inverted time, you need an oxygen mask to breathe, which I thought was a great concept. Having said that, I noticed that when characters were traveling on a truck or on a boat in inverted time, they didn't seem to be wearing masks at that point. And I got confused because, like, oh, is it because they're not traveling through inverted time anymore? But then you see you see what's happening on the outside of the vehicle, and you can see, oh no, the boat is going backwards, and we are going back in the truck to the big airplane explosion. So I guess time is inverted. Yeah, that was a little confusing. I wasn't sure how it worked. How are they breathing in the truck, and how are they breathing on the boat? But I mean, I think I noticed that the interiors of the vehicles were covered up in some kind of plastic. So I wasn't sure if that somehow kept the oxygen inside the transport. Again, it wasn't explained, so no idea why they weren't wearing masks necessarily on the transport while they're in inverted time. But I can only presume they somehow lined the interior of the vehicles up with a setup that would keep the oxygen in that space. I don't know. Again, I'm going to have to rewatch it to see if they explain that. Oh yeah, this was another thing that didn't bug me massively, but just a bit. The villain's reasoning for destroying humanity was just because he was dying. Felt a bit basic. Like, I felt like it needed some backstory into why he felt so strongly that everyone should die with him just because he was dying of cancer. Like, it sounded really petty and kind of... It just wasn't explained. It was just as simple as that. Oh, well, I'm dying of cancer, and that's really unfair, so I think the whole of reality should die with me. Like, I don't get why he was going through so much effort to do it, because it was a lot of effort to try and get that done when you're going to die anyway, but I guess it's just a way for him to die with a smile on his face? I don't know. That, I feel like, I mean, there was so much happening in this film. There probably wasn't enough time to add more things in it. It was already a long movie as it was, but yeah, it was very basic. Again, it didn't bother me hugely, but it was like a thing where I was like, there's like a really basic reason for like destroying everything. So it was just strange. At the final action set piece of the film, where the military have devised a plan to attack the enemies through both directions of time, I was a little confused why attacking invertedly would necessarily help. Like, I think Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, who's like the I don't know what you call him, the commanding officer of the military, he was saying that one team would go through time invertedly to the location to purposely fail achieving the mission, which I guess made sense because they're going backwards, so they wouldn't be able to necessarily get to where they needed. And then he was explaining that people who were going through time normally would also try to complete the mission and succeed. Yeah, I was a bit just confused why they needed to go through both flows of time. I understand that there were ways to protect each other. Yeah, I guess that's why. I guess they needed people to go through time invertedly, so I guess they could see how the bad guys had booby-trapped the entrance, or if they could protect the people going through time normally. Yeah, I guess that was it. I don't know. Again, it wasn't really made hugely clear to me, so I can only assume that half the team went fighting invertedly. Because one, I guess it's harder to fight someone who's traveling invertedly, so you can't predict necessarily what they're going to do. And at the same time, they can see what the bad guys have prepared in that location before the people who are traveling through time normally get there. Yeah, I guess so. Because I guess by the time the people traveling normally in the helicopter have reached the location, they're getting off the helicopter where the people invertedly are getting back into the helicopter. Yeah, I think that was basically it. Also, there was another thing. Like, I was thinking, well, why doesn't the whole team go through both directions of time? Like, we've seen that the same person can be in the same environment and area through both flows of time. Like, we've seen Washington fight himself. So why can't we have the entire military go through both spaces of time? I mean, I guess the only thing is you're at risk of touching yourself and creating some kind of paradox, but I mean, Denzel Washington did it in the uniform he was wearing, so presumably you just don't need skin contact, which they weren't going to get because they were all heavily armored and in uniform, so I don't know. Yeah, they should have just sent the whole army in both flows of time. I get, like, from a story perspective, it would be cool to see Pattinson go inverted time and Washington go through regular time, so it's kind of an interesting story point. But yeah, I mean, logically, I'm just like, why didn't you just send everyone through both flows of time? I don't know. You can clearly see that my mind is just boggled. And I kind of love it at the same time as hating it. Let me have a look through my notes. Oh, they might have been doing it also to distract enemies, but again, just throw everyone in there. But yeah, I think this hopefully is going to segue nicely into my conclusion as I'm talking about rewatchability, because first of all, no matter what I've said today, I do recommend you watch this film, at least because it is such a unique experience, and I've seen things now on the big screen that I haven't seen before in a film, so that was really exciting, just to say, I haven't seen that before. That was really cool to see on the big screen. So just for that, go check it out. Go see something new. We don't need all these remakes and reboots constantly in franchises. We should encourage original material. So let's go see it. Let's go support it, because it was really cool to see on the big screen, and I hadn't seen that kind of thing before, at least not to that extent. But much like the characters in the film, I think Christopher Nolan, the director, wants you to experience this multiple times, because once you've watched it once, from a blind perspective, you can now have a completely different experience rewatching the film with all the gained knowledge that you got from the first experience. And I think that's exciting. I actually think Christopher Nolan maybe made this purposely confusing so you will rewatch it, much like the characters are re-experiencing their situations when they invert time. We also are re-experiencing the film. Like, I think that's kind of cool. That I hope that was his intention, because if it was his intention, it worked on me. I'm definitely going to have to watch this at least one more time just to make sure I can wrap my head around it. And I'm sure I'll watch it more times than that. Like, this is such a ambitious and awesome film that I gotta rewatch it. So yeah, I will always support Christopher Nolan's ambition when it comes to his filmmaking, because there's no other director that makes films the way he does, and I think that should be celebrated and appreciated and cherished. He got us Inception, which was another really cool movie concept. Dunkirk was an experience. I'm glad I saw that on the big screen. Interstellar, no matter what you think of the ending, and I kind of think the ending is quite cheesy, that wormhole was so cool to go through. Like, when he does the effects, he really does the effects. He really does 110%. He is so committed to what he's doing that, you can just see it through the screen. His passion, it all comes through there. And he's one of these few directors that can, take a big budget from a studio and do whatever he wants with it. With a budget that he gets, you'd think studios would just interfere constantly, but because of Christopher Nolan's movies, They just let him do what he wants. So I think that needs to be celebrated, and we need to support that kind of filmmaking. So the studios know we will go see these unique films. If you let the artists do what they want to do, we will go see these. So yeah, definitely support this film. I really did miss being able to see a new film in the cinema, and you know, after the cinemas being closed for so long, this was an exciting film to return with. I'm still confused to why they released it while, you know, there's restrictions going on in the cinemas, but nonetheless, I'm grateful that they released it because I really needed to see a new film and experience it in the cinema. So, yeah, thank you, Christopher Nolan. You made someone very happy. So, yeah, this film isn't perfect, but it is an experience. It's definitely an experience, and one that I doubt you will have seen on the big screen, because he always brings something I haven't seen before. Yeah, that's all my thoughts on Tenet. Thank you so much for listening to my thoughts. Please like and share to support the channel, subscribe to keep up to date with any movie, TV and video game talk, and if you'd like to support the channel even more, which would be really appreciated, then check out the link in the description to listen to a new single by The Undersiders, which is now available on iTunes, as well as many other digital platforms. Your support is always appreciated, and I hope you have a great evening. So for now, stay safe and take care.